as many of you will know, this year is obviously the 25th anniversary of the awards, and I'm wearing one of our special edition 25th anniversary pin badges. Lindsay's actually here with me today, so if you speak really nicely to Lindsay, she may let you have one of those as well. So 25th anniversary this year, we're going to be announcing our results on this year on the 14th of October, slightly delayed as it was last year. Are there any judges here that haven't got your reports in yet? Lindsay does have a list, so she will be hunting you down throughout the day, so and she won't let you escape. We'll be announcing on the 14th, and again this year we'll be having our Go Green campaign, encouraging buildings, monuments, to light up green. So we lit up the White Cliffs at Dover last year, obviously Green Flag Award winning site down there, Samphire Ho. We'll be doing the same this year to raise the profile of parks and green space, but also celebrate the fantastic work that you do. I often say, and Chris says, I've been here 18 years. I came for 6 months when I joined the organisation to work on Green Flag Award, but was just blown away by the people I started working with. And I think that's, to me, that's the important thing that I think you don't forget, is the difference you're making to people's lives. It's a really challenging time for you out there within the sector, but if you just see the people and the enjoyment, particularly over the last 18 months people have got from those green spaces, I mean, what you're doing is absolutely fantastic. So, you know, thank you on behalf of me as a park user. But I'm here today to talk about Green Heritage Site Accreditation. That's additional accreditation you can achieve if you also achieved Green Flag Award, supported by Historic England since 2003, and just used to be just in England. It's now in the whole of the UK. We've got sites in Ireland, and we've got sites in our other countries around the world as well now, applying for the heritage accreditation. So I'm going to take you through the accreditation. I'm going to take you through how it works, how you apply, the criteria for the award, how we assess it, and then obviously how you can celebrate at the end. So Jennifer and Erica have done a great job actually of setting the sort of scene for me about what heritage is, because I think often when we talk about the Green Heritage Site Accreditation, the first thing people will say to me is, oh well, my site isn't recognised and isn't listed by Historic England as being a recognised historic park or green space. That doesn't need to be the case for Green Heritage Site Accreditation. This is about celebrating the history of our 27,000 green spaces, because I don't think any of the spaces out there would not be eligible for the Heritage Award. Now clearly I think I've got the same issue that Drew might have had with sort of pictures that look great on the screen but not on the big screen. Clearly some physical features, clearly a heritage park, isn't it? We've got some features here which show that this park was developed quite a number of years ago. Historic bandstand, monuments, etc. Within this space, and historic bedding as well. But it could be the previous use of the site. That could be the history of the space. So what did the site used to be before it became a public park? Again, that's history that can be interpreted. But it could be more recent use of a space. It doesn't have to be something that's 100 or 200 years old. What was the modern history of that space? What did that space used to be before it became a public park? And how's the legacy of what happened on that space interpreted and shared with people who use the space? It could be natural features, so natural landscapes. It's an ancient woodland. So again, all history of these spaces that can be interpreted and should be conserved for future generations. Could be archaeological features, again, telling the story about what used to be there in the past. But it also could be a historic event, so it doesn't need to be physical things as well. It could be a particular event that happened in that space in the past, or a series of events, and that's going to be interpreted and preserved. That story of what happened in the past will be preserved for future generations. Could be the designer. Who was the site designed by? Could be a famous designer such as Birkenhead Park, or it could be someone who worked within a local authority, a local council, and was responsible way back for designing parks. Not a person that's known on a national scale, but actually their story is it could be just as interesting to the public. This was a local person who worked for the council who designed the local park. Who was that person? Where did they live? What did they do before? What did they do after? All of these things are the history of our green spaces. And of course it could be the people who lived on the site before it became a public park, who the public park's named after and what's their history, or someone that's associated with an event that took place within that space as well. They're all things we can interpret as part of the Green Heritage Site Accreditation. So why do we do it? Why do we have Green Heritage Accreditation? Well, Michelle, who you all know does the training, she always uses this heritage cycle, which some of you will have just seen as part of their training, and she said that, well, this is why we're doing it, because we want people to value the history. If they value it, we care for it. If we care for it, we enjoy it more. And if we enjoy it more, we have a thirst to learn more. And then that follows to ensure that that history is preserved and maintained for future generations. So that's why we do it. So it won't be any surprise that within Green Heritage Site Accreditation, this is what we say we're looking for. We're looking for sites that understand the heritage value, acknowledge the heritage value, share that heritage value with users, and conserve, enhance, and help people enjoy. And I think parks are a great place for people to engage in history where they haven't been engaged in history before. So I'm involved in a project at my local park, and we've started to restore and interpret some of the history of the site. And the number of people who have lived there 80 years and didn't know the history of the park, didn't know who lived there before, didn't know why it was there. So this is really important, and actually it's given those people much more sense of pride in where they live, because they now understand the history of their local area. So it's really important we acknowledge and conserve it for future generations. So what do you need to do to apply for the Green Heritage Site Accreditation? Well, you already need to have a Green Flag Award already. So you already will have worked on some heritage elements because it's part of the main criteria. We'll ask you to provide a conservation plan. This is where people sort of say, oh, conservation plan, it's going to be really difficult. It's about you understanding what's there and why it's important. So what's it within your space? Why is it important? How, given I know all that, how should it be managed properly? And then what's my plan in place to ensure that those historic elements are managed properly into the future? So in a lot of cases, what we find with your Green Flag Award applications, you already cover this in your management plans already. Your management plans are detailed because they're sites that have already identified the history of the site and have a plan in place to conserve it and also share that heritage as well. Why your site qualifies. So that's a 250-word statement, and I'll explain why that's important at the end. And the date your site opens. So our normal rule is, as Jennifer was mentioning, the site has to be over 30 years of age, but it can be younger than 30 years of age if it has features on it which are over 30 years of age. So really any of our spaces should be eligible. But I also think the criteria is quite useful, even if you are a brand new park that's just opened, is considering the criteria. How do you ensure that in 30 years' time, when it becomes a historic site, that information hasn't been lost about who designed it, who the people who worked on it, who built the park, where did they come from, where did they live, what materials did we use? All that type of information is information that can be taken and used in future when you get to the stage where you can apply for the award. So we have a process similar to the Green Flag Award. Again, you've seen this. It all happens at the same time. You put your application in. We provide some judges to assess the site who are all specially trained heritage assessors. They carry out a desk assessment. They carry out a site assessment, and then they'll provide you with a feedback report. And obviously anybody who's successful then gets the opportunity to publicise not only their Green Flag Award but also heritage accredited as well. Similar again to Green Flag Award, 30% on the desk assessment and 70% on the field assessment. So the desk assessment is, what we're going to look at in your documentation is, have you identified the heritage significance of your park? And have you detailed that in a plan? Do you have management buy-in for the maintenance and management of that space? And does the management plan, the overarching management plan, translate the objectives of a conservation plan into action on the ground, so you have an action plan to deliver what you've identified in the conservation plan to preserve, enhance and share the heritage of that space? How you plan to engage the community in the heritage, so again we'll be assessing that under the desk assessment, and then how staff, volunteers, people who work on the site all understand the heritage of the site, so we ensure that proper management takes place. So that's what we'll be assessing on the desk assessment, and then we'll come over and we'll consider the field assessment, which those of you coming out with us with Lindsay and I this afternoon probably need to listen extra carefully, because this is what you're going to be using this afternoon when we go out on this site and measure whether we think this site meets or does not meet the criteria for a Green Heritage Site Accreditation. So the first thing, not surprisingly, are conservation standards. What do we think the standards of conservation are? Are the standards meeting recognised acceptable standards for the particular maintenance of that feature? Whether it's a building, whether it's a new roof that's going on, anything that's being managed. Statues, are they being, you know, because we've seen some horrendous stuff, haven't we? I've seen some horrendous stuff where rather than bringing in a proper conservation expert to maintain some statues, someone's sprayed it with a can of spray paint because it looks better. It's ensuring that people are following proper standards, and again, that's why the planning and the documentation is so important. Those historic features are given prominence on the site. So are they used, are they part of the space, and they're not sort of locked away behind doors and you can't get to see them? So we're really keen on all the heritage elements of these green spaces are integrated into the life of the site and people are enjoying them. Any features that are restored properly. So evidence that the conservation plan, if the plan was in place to restore this, has it been followed, and has it been done to a quality standard as well, and recognising the standards of conservation. We'll be testing all of that as well. And of course, the original design, has the original design been kept faithful to in any of these restorations? Features are intact and in use. So again, here's obviously Bowling Green, pavilion still in use for its original purpose. But it could be other things on site, the bedding here, all those features here appear to still be in use, but that may not always be the case. So it might be that some features are disappearing, or it could be if a building has gone from a site, there's a way of remembering that building that used to be there, and we see it in quite a lot of sites now where they have put in the outline of the house that used to be there, for example, or the building that used to be there, and then there's interpretation. So again, thinking about what can't be there for the future can still be, the story of it can still be told. Or it could be some historic bedding displays, and we know often it is challenging to maintain huge swathes of traditional bedding displays. It could be a portion of that historic bedding is kept, and the bedding, remainder of the bedding is managed in a different way. But there's a way of interpreting what may have been there years ago and what the history of something like that feature used to be like. The features here are integrated into the park. So here a great example of where a building has been kept within the park for use as a park facility by people using the park, rather than buildings being sold off and used for other purposes other than their intention to be part of the park. So important that we try and if possible, if that has happened, how can we look to bring those buildings back into the park? Maybe not for their original use, but for a use that's in keeping with the green space. And then information and enjoyment on the site. So are people actively enjoying and engaging in the heritage on the site? And is there interpretation as well of what those historic elements are? Events, It plays reenactments. I've seen some great stuff going on. What I often talk about is there's a park. It's not far from where I live, where they got amateur dramatic group who actually dressed up by the people who are buried in the graveyard and hid behind the gravestones. And as the school children came through, they popped up and told the story about the building they built in the city, the factory they used to manage. Lots of ways that heritage can be interpreted to engage the public and help them to enjoy. And of course, the more they enjoy it, as we saw from that cycle, the more they enjoy it, the more they respect and the more they care for it. And of course, maintaining the historic character and appearance of space as well, we'll also be considering this. And this is a couple of pictures Michelle always uses, and it's like it's a before or after, or an after and before, isn't it? And this is understanding the space, so the historic landscape is maintained. So again, an example here where someone has clearly, not understanding the historic nature and design of the green space, has planted this tree on the left, and then an opportunity has come to remove that tree. It's either come to the end of its life, but understanding the landscape, that tree won't be replaced, because actually we put back in the original design and the original vista up to the house that was the original history of this park or green space. So again, it's that knowledge, isn't it? It's understanding what's there, understanding why it's important, and then having that appropriate management in place and ensuring things don't happen that shouldn't happen. And historic horticulture displays, again, are they managed? Are they in keeping with the character of the space? And people understand why they're as they are. Why are these managed as they are? I know you can go around parks now. A lot of people, you'll hear a lot of people saying that's not very sustainable, that bedding. We should be taking all that out and putting something else in. But there may be some historic reason why we're going to continue that type of bedding in this type of setting. So again, it's us understanding and sharing with people why you've made the decisions that you've made. And then, of course, here historic collections, where they are historic collections of trees or historic collections of plants as well. How that you recognise them and apply appropriate management and maintenance so they're there for future generations. And again, this all links back to the planning and the documentation that you have in place. And then probably sometimes one of the most controversial ones is new and replacement features in historic parks and green spaces. And again, Birkenhead Park, the first or second public park, depending on which part of the world you live in. If I'm back home, I have to say it's the first. If I'm in the Midlands, I say it's the second. So, very modern building within Birkenhead Park. Very controversial when it was built by some people, but actually a huge and massive community asset now to that park and green space. Or the City of London Cemetery and Crematorium, really historic, and yet here's a 1960s, 70s new building put within that space. Some people love it, some people loathe it. We're not really into making those decisions in the Heritage Accreditation. What we're interested in is seeing how the decisions were made rather than offering our personal opinion. And actually, this building on the right is a historic building. It's been there more than 30 years, so it's now become part of the history of that space as well. So it's important that we don't always get rid of things that maybe are viewed as modern in parks and green spaces, because they're part of the development of the space, aren't they, over time, and things have changed and new facilities come in, and we may want to remove some of them, but we should look to preserve at least to give people a feel of the journey that park's been on over a period of time. So, we'll score all that this afternoon on this site. If you reach that magic 66 mark or more, then you'll receive your Green Heritage Site Accreditation, which loads of people often say to me, it's like sort of getting the cherry, isn't it, on the top of the cake. Is often how they, and there's often real pride in having that additional accreditation, because you've realised the importance of the history of that space. And then you receive as well opportunity to celebrate your plaques, your certificates. There's actually going to be an enhanced, because it's 25th anniversary, there's the enhanced marketing this year for all the parks and green spaces, because we haven't been able to do our big award ceremonies, so everybody's going to be getting enhanced marketing to promote their Green Heritage Site Accreditation or Green Flag Award or Green Flag Community Award. That'll all be coming out to you shortly after you receive your flags, and including a poster where you'll insert that 250-word statement we talked about before on why your park, so the public can understand why you've got Heritage Accreditation and what's really special about your park and green space. So that will all be coming out over the next few weeks to the successful winners. So what support is out there for you if you're considering Heritage Accreditation? We have the Green Flag Resource Hub. So on the Green Flag Award site now, there's a growing resource hub there of conservation plans, example management plans, information about managing the historic environment. All that information is there on the resource hub now, and that will grow. And if anybody finds something they think that should be included on the resource hub, please let us know and we'll get that included. Huge amounts of advice from Historic England. If you go to their website, there's an advice tab, huge amounts of information on there about management planning and conservation standards and how to manage your green spaces. And also from us, we also offer as well, and it's an offer to anybody here today, if you're an organisation who hasn't got Heritage Accreditation and wants to put one of your sites in for the first time, then we're going to be offering a mentoring visit. So one of our experienced assessors will come out, give you a pre-assessment, tell you what you're doing well and what needs to be improved for you to apply for the Heritage Accreditation. So that's an offer if anybody wants to take that up. Talk to Lindsay or me, or drop us an email or phone us after this event. And then of course training as well. So if you want bespoke training on the Heritage Accreditation, we can do that individually or for organisations as a whole. Or again, another plug really is to consider becoming a Green Flag Award judge and a Green Heritage Site accredited judge as well, because that's sometimes one of the best ways to find out about the Heritage Accreditation, but also great opportunity to actually go and see what other people are doing and learn from their adoption of the Heritage Accreditation. So any of those, please take them up. They're my contact details, so please contact me, give me a call. I always say to people it's best to give me a call because you know how many emails you get. Give me a call if you want to discuss any of this. My detail, Lindsay's detail, they're all available, and our phone numbers are all on the website. And of course on the Green Flag Award website, on the copy of Raising the Standard, all the information is there within the Raising the Standard booklet about the Heritage Accreditation. Okay. Thank you very much.
We'll take one question. Is there only one burning question at the back there? I think it's James.
Okay.
Paul, one of the things that the Midlands Forum research has highlighted is those cold spots in the region, and one of the indicators of that is areas with fewer green flags or green heritage awards as well. How can Midlands Forum work with you better to support those areas and basically develop capacity, I suppose, in those cold spot areas for green flag and improving parks to get to that standard?
Yeah, I mean what we've been looking at, we've done some research recently with Community First Partnerships in looking at where those gaps are within the country, and I think that's part of information we want to feed back to Polly around how that support, how we can perhaps get additional governmental support to work in those areas. But of course, what we'd like to do as an organisation, what we've been doing. One thing I was going to mention, it's quite interesting actually, the research we did, and this is really testament again down to what you've been doing, is our research showed, we haven't published this yet, so it showed inequality between different parts of the country, but actually between different groups within society it showed pretty good coverage. There wasn't a huge disparity, and that really is down to, and I know, people often say, oh, green flag is always like in the posh areas, isn't it? And I know that isn't the case because we've talked to many organisations who particularly targeted more deprived communities and used the standard to drive that up. So we'd be really keen on having a further conversation with you about looking at how we could put a programme together to particularly target those areas with training, support, to help where we have got those gaps, where we haven't got Green Flag Award or Green Heritage, how we become, I think, much more focused into the future on where the limited support we've got, we can target.
Thank you, Paul. Paul Todd.